A crowded subway, the hum of conversation, and the rhythmic sound of the train rattling on its tracks. Among the passengers, one man sits quietly, lost in thought. His clothes are simple, his posture relaxed, just another commuter trying to get from one place to another. But today, he's about to become the center of attention. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, consider subscribing for more inspiring tales that remind us kindness still exists in the world. Across the aisle, a group of teenagers chat loudly, their voices carrying over the murmurs of other passengers. One of them, clearly the leader, notices the man. He nudges his friends, a smirk forming on his face. "Hey, check this guy out," he says just loud enough for others to hear. "Who even takes the subway anymore? Can't afford a car, old man?" His friends laugh, their amusement cutting through the quiet subway atmosphere. A few passengers glance over, but no one intervenes. They look away, uncomfortable, but unwilling to get involved. The man being mocked doesn't react. He simply gazes out the window, his expression unreadable. This only emboldens the teenager. "Oh, I get it," the boy continues, leaning forward. "You're too broke to care, huh? Or are you just ignoring me?" More laughter. Still, the man remains silent. But the teenager isn't satisfied. He wants a reaction. He wants to feel superior. That's when the man finally turns his head, his gaze meeting the teenager's. His eyes are calm, steady, and piercing. There's no anger, no irritation, just a quiet intensity that somehow unsettles the boy. And then, he speaks. "Why does it bother you so much?" The teenager blinks. He wasn't expecting that. It's just weird," he stammers. "Someone like you, riding the subway. You don't look like you belong here." A faint smile plays on the man's lips. "And where do you think I belong?" Now, the boy shifts in his seat. He glances at his friends, but they're no longer laughing. The other passengers are watching, curious. I don't know. Somewhere else, I guess. Somewhere with people like you." The man leans back, completely unbothered. "I think I'm exactly where I need to be." The boy laughs awkwardly, trying to regain control of the conversation. "That's deep, I guess," he mutters. The subway rumbles forward. The moment stretches, the energy in the train subtly shifting. Other passengers who once ignored the scene now seem fully engaged. But then, as the train approaches the next stop, the man does something unexpected. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small folded piece of paper. Without a word, he hands it to the teenager. The boy hesitates before taking it, confused. As he unfolds the paper, his expression changes. His smirk fades. His friends lean in, curious. The note contains just a few words, written in neat handwriting. "Judging someone doesn't define them. It defines you." Silence. For the first time, the teenager doesn't know what to say. But the man isn't finished. As the subway slows down, he stands up and gestures toward the doors. "Come with me," he says simply. The teenager looks up, startled. "What? Where?" The man tilts his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "You'll see." The doors slide open. The man steps onto the platform, waiting. For a moment, the teenager hesitates. His pride tells him to stay seated, to laugh it off, pretend he doesn't care. But there's something about the man's presence, something undeniably different about him. The subway doors start to close. And then, he moves. The teenager stands up, stepping off the train just before the doors shut behind him. His friends watch in shock, whispering among themselves. As the train pulls away, the teenager is alone with the man. And everything is about to change. The teenager stands on the bustling subway platform, watching the train disappear into the tunnel. He glances at the man beside him, still calm, composed, and unshaken. "All right," the teenager says, stuffing the note into his pocket. "Where are we going?" The man smiles faintly and gestures toward the exit. "Come, I want to show you something." Something about his voice, his presence, commands respect. Without fully understanding why, the teenager follows. They walk through the busy streets, the noise of the city surrounding them. Cars honk, people rush past, life moves on. The teenager steals glances at the man beside him, still unsure what to make of him. Finally, curiosity gets the best of him. "So, what's your deal?" he asks. "You don't seem like a regular guy." The man chuckles softly. What makes someone regular? The teenager shrugs. I mean, most guys your age don't talk like that. They don't just walk off a subway with some random kid. The man nods, as if considering the thought. Maybe I'm not most guys. Before the teenager can respond, they stop in front of a small, worn-down building. A sign above the entrance reads, Hope Haven, place for everyone. The teenager frowns. A shelter? He asks hesitantly. The man nods. I spend time here. Thought you might like to meet some people who could teach you something. The teenager shifts uncomfortably. He's never been in a place like this before. He doesn't know what to expect. I didn't sign up for this, he mutters. The man simply holds the door open. You can leave if you want, but if you stay, you might see something worth remembering. The teenager hesitates, then steps inside. The shelter is warm but simple, a few chairs, tables, volunteers moving around, serving food. A few people sit quietly, eating, some deep in conversation. Others laugh softly, finding light in even the hardest of circumstances. A woman approaches, her face lighting up when she sees the man. You're back, she exclaims warmly. The teenager narrows his eyes. Why did she sound so happy to see this guy? Keanu nods. I brought someone new today. The woman turns to the teenager, her expression kind but knowing. You're welcome here, she says gently. The teenager mutters a quick thanks, still unsure why he's here. That's when the man leads him to a table where an older man sits, holding a steaming cup of tea. His clothes are clean but worn, his face lined with experience and hardship. Keanu gestures toward him. This is David. He has a story I think you should hear. The teenager sits down reluctantly, arms crossed. David looks up, his eyes sharp but kind. So what brings you here, kid? He asks. The teenager hesitates. I don't know, he just brought me. David chuckles, shaking his head. Sounds like him. Then, after a moment, he leans forward. You ever lost everything, he asks. The teenager blinks. Number. David nods slowly. I used to have a great job. A house, a car, a family. But life doesn't always go the way you plan. The teenager leans in slightly, curiosity creeping in. What happened? David sighs. Lost my job. Thought I'd find another quickly, but the bills kept coming. Before I knew it, everything was gone. The teenager swallows. But you're here now. You seem okay. David smiles faintly. Because people like him remind me that I matter. He gestures toward Keanu. That everyone matters. Asterisk, asterisk. The teenager glances at Keanu, processing the words. Then, Keanu finally speaks up. David's story isn't unique. Millions of people go through things no one sees. That's why kindness matters. The teenager looks down, his fingers tightening around the note in his pocket. I never thought about it like that. David pats his shoulder. Most people don't. Keanu checks his watch. Time to go, he says, standing up. The teenager frowns. Wait, go where? Keanu just smiles. You'll see. The teenager follows him back outside, his mind racing with everything he's heard. They walk for a few minutes, until Keanu stops in front of another building. The sign above it reads, Children's Hospital. The teenager hesitates. What are we doing here? Keanu opens the door. Come inside and find out. Inside, the atmosphere is completely different. There's an air of hope, of resilience. Nurses walk through the halls. Doctors move with purpose. And in one of the playrooms, a small group of children sit together, their laughter filling the space. Keanu steps forward, and the second they see him, their faces light up. Keanu, one of the kids exclaims, running up to hug him. The teenager stares. Keanu kneels down, ruffling the kid's hair. How's my favorite superhero today? The child grins. Better now. Keanu laughs and starts handing out small gifts, comic books, action figures, things that make the kids genuinely happy. The teenager watches, stunned. You do this often, he asks. Keanu nods. As much as I can. Sometimes small things mean the most. The teenager suddenly feels embarrassed. He had mocked this man, laughed at him, assumed things about him. But Keanu never once retaliated. He only showed kindness. The teenager takes a deep breath. And for the first time in his life, he wants to be better. The teenager sits quietly, watching as Keanu moves around the hospital room, chatting with the kids like old friends. He laughs with them, listens to their stories, and even sits on the floor to play a quick card game. It's surreal. Just hours ago, the teenager had been mocking this man, assuming he was a nobody because he took the subway. Now, he's watching him change lives with nothing but his time and kindness. A nurse walks by and stops beside the teenager. She notices his silent amazement and smiles. He comes here a lot, she says, never announces it, never makes a big deal out of it, just shows up and spends time with the kids. The teenager swallows. Why? The nurse looks at Keanu, who's now laughing as a little girl shows him her drawing, because he knows how much it means to them. And he doesn't do it for attention, does it because it's the right thing to do. The teenager nods slowly. For the first time in a long time, he feels small. Not because someone made him feel that way, but because he realizes how little he's done for others. After spending time at the hospital, Keanu motions for the teenager to follow him once again. They step outside, the evening air cool and quiet. The teenager finally speaks. "You're not what I expected." Keanu smiles. Most people aren't. They walk in silence for a while, the city buzzing around them. Then, Keanu stops in front of a quiet park. A single streetlight flickers overhead, casting a soft glow on a woman sitting alone on a bench. Beside her is a cart filled with neatly folded blankets and supplies. She looks up as Keanu approaches, her tired eyes brightening. "Keanu, you're here," she says warmly. Keanu nods and sits beside her. "Of course, Margaret, how are you holding up?" She shrugs. "One day at a time. But I can't complain. People like you make it easier." The teenager watches, unsure of what to say. Margaret turns to him, studying him curiously. "Who's this?" Keanu smiles. "Someone who needed to see what kindness can do." The teenager shifts awkwardly. He doesn't know why, but something about this humble woman, sitting with her few possessions and a peaceful smile, makes him feel guilty. I didn't mean anything back there on the train," he blurts out suddenly. Margaret chuckles softly, shaking her head. "Oh, honey, you're not the first, and you won't be the last, but at least you're here now." Keanu reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small envelope, handing it to Margaret. She opens it, her hands trembling slightly. When she sees what's inside, her eyes widen. "Keanu, this is too much." He shakes his head. "It's exactly what you deserve. Use it for yourself or for others, whatever you think is best." The teenager leans over, catching a glimpse of the money inside. His stomach twists. He had laughed at this man, mocked him. And yet, here Keanu was, quietly changing lives without expecting anything in return. He finally looks up at Keanu, his voice unsteady. "You do this a lot, don't you?" Keanu shrugs. "It's not about how much you give, it's about how you give. Small gestures can mean the world to someone." The teenager is silent. For the first time, he sees the world differently. As they leave the park, Keanu stops at the edge of the sidewalk, looking out at the glowing city skyline. The teenager hesitates, then finally speaks. "I think I've been looking at things all wrong." Keanu turns to him intrigued. "How so?" The boy kicks at the ground, struggling to find the right words. "I used to think it was all about stuff. You know, money, cars, status. But none of that matters, does it?" Keanu smiles, a hint of pride in his eyes. "What matters is how you make people feel, the impact you leave behind." The teenager nods slowly. Then, for the first time, he feels something unexpected, a desire to be better. "I think I've got a lot to learn," he admits. Keanu places a hand on his shoulder, his grip firm but reassuring. "We all do. The important thing is that you're willing to start." As they part ways, the teenager glances back at the warm glow of the shelter, the hospital, the park bench. He sees them all differently now. He thinks back to the note Keanu gave him, the simple words that had seemed meaningless before. He pulls it from his pocket, unfolding it once more. "Judging someone doesn't define them. It defines you." A small smile crosses his face. This time he understands. The next day, the subway is crowded, as always. The teenager sits quietly, his mind still replaying everything from the night before. Then he notices something. An older man struggles with his heavy bags, looking for a place to sit. A few people glance his way, but no one moves. For a brief moment, the teenager hesitates. Then, he gets up. "Here, sir. Take my seat." The man smiles in gratitude. The teenager doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. Because this time, he knows it's not about being noticed. It's about doing the right thing. Sometimes life puts people in your path for a reason. Sometimes it takes one moment, one experience, one person to shift your entire perspective. And sometimes, the people we judge the most are the ones who have the most to teach us. So the next time you see someone who doesn't fit your expectations, take a second to ask yourself, what if there's more to their story than you realize? Because kindness, it's always the right choice. If this story made you think differently about kindness and perspective, hit that subscribe button. We share powerful stories like this every week, stories that inspire, challenge, and leave a lasting impact. Don't miss out.